Hi, I'm Tony Mejia, the site pastor in Forest and Grand Bend. If you're new, part of Vitalpoint Church, or if you're still trying to figure out faith, welcome. Have you ever thought about what you say? When I was a kid, I actually was talking to one of my sisters and I said to her, "Whoa, nice mustache." Yeah. How do you think that went? Literally moments later, she came up and asked if she got everything. And she shaved her entire face. She even had razor burns because she didn't even know how to use one. My dad was so mad. And he said something that actually stood and stays with me here today. And he says this. He said, "The things that you say weighs on those who trust you." I thought he was overreacting, but I don't anymore. Have you ever said something that you wish you could take back? Have you ever had someone remember something that you said long ago and you're like, whoa? Or maybe someone has said something to you and you carry it with you here today. Words have weight and they can be seen on people's faces. And there seems to be like this tremendous power in the words that we say. There's actually this wisdom passage where it speaks about this in Proverbs 18:21. And it says this: "Death and life are in the power of the tongue." When we look at this, it actually brings to mind that our words actually have a lot of power. Not only that, it reveals something about us inside of us. And also points us to today's passage found in James chapter 3, verses 1 to 12. We're going to be reading this as we continue this conversation. So let's begin there. And it reads like this: "Not many of you should become teachers, my brothers, for you know that we who teach will be judged with great strictness. For we all stumble in many ways. If anyone does not stumble in what he says, he is a perfect man. He's able to bridle his whole body. And if we put bits in the mouths of horses so that they may obey, we guide their whole bodies as well. Look at the ships also. Though they are so large, they're driven by strong winds and they are guided by a very small rudder wherever the will of the pilot directs. So also the tongue is a small member, yet it boasts of great things. How great a forest is set ablaze by such a small fire. And the tongue is a fire, a world of unrighteousness. So the tongue is set among our members, staining the whole body, setting on fire the entire course of life, set on fire by hell. For every kind of beast and bird, of reptile or sea creature can be tamed or has been tamed by mankind, but no human being can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil full of deadly poison. With it we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse people who are made in the image or the likeness of God. From the same mouth come blessing and cursing. My brothers, these things ought not to be so. Does the spring pour forth from the same opening both fresh and salt water? Can a fig tree, my brothers, bear olives, or grapevine produce figs? Neither can salt yield fresh water. We're in this series, Steadfast Faith, where we're looking at the book of James, and we see wisdom and practical ways of living. And we're going to actually see that steadfast faith isn't just seen in what we believe. It's actually heard in what we say. And if that is true, then what does it sound like in real life? I'm so glad you asked. We're going to look at each and every illustration that James has here for us and see this truth and how we can live it here today. And the first one is how words weigh. I don't have to convince you of that. If you just think about your answers of those three questions I asked, something you wanted to take back, something someone's heard you say and they remember years later, or something that you carry today because someone spoke it over your life, you probably answered yes or maybe to some of those things. There is great impact. And James actually decides to talk about teachers. And we're looking at teachers, we're looking at scholars, we're looking at rabbis who could be like pastors or people who are church leaders or people who are sharing publicly because they were well-respected, honored, and celebrated, maybe even today. But here these guys would be sharing, and it would have an impact on how people believed, how people lived, and actually how communities were formed. But there was a warning attached to it, saying that there's actually a judgment in what you say. There's this great strictness. Why? Because God truly cares about what is said, especially around his word. But he said something that we all can begin to think about or even consider, and that's not that it's that many of us are not meant to be teachers, and that's okay. Let's be honest. We don't need a stage to shape someone's life. If you actually think about it, your words, maybe with your family, with your friends, those who you call family, your coworkers, the people around you, you say something and you see that they actually were listening to you. There's this great impact. Not all of us are meant to be teachers, yet all of us have a great influence in what we say. So he wants to bring us into this place. I love how he says in verse 2, he says, for we all stumble in many ways. Because he goes from teachers to horses. And really my only experience with horses are people like wearing t-shirts with horses on them. That's the extent of it. When I was in a city church, we actually brought in a real horse and it was a big deal because it was real. We got to experience it. I didn't even know how large they were until they walked in, and it was just crazy. And there was this pressure, peer pressure, the weight of words, as people are saying, you should get on the horse. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. It should be easy. So as I was getting on it, I literally kept saying, whoa, because it's one of my favorite words and just the way I express myself. But the trainer kept trying to drag the horse and move it forward. As I was saying, whoa, she told me not to. And it was just not a pretty picture. That will be the extent of my horse riding. See, we may have really great intentions, but our words are not always so great. If we look at the horse bridle or what was placed on a horse's head, it'd be attached to the bit, which is a small piece in the mouth. And it would also be attached to the rein. So you can actually direct the entire horse and where it needs to go. And I didn't know that till now. See, I would have done a lot better if that was the case. But here's the thing. You and I are not horses, maybe stallions, some of us, but we're not horses. We're actually not even perfect. We can try to get it right, but we tend not to. The only person ever to have it right wasn't you and I. The Bible actually teaches that there's one who was sinless, who walked and did not mess up his words, and his name is Jesus. I love how James actually puts himself into this conversation and says, we all have stumbled. And this should be huge for you and I, because he's Jesus's brother. He's also a prominent leader within the church. And he's saying, we've all stumbled. Just think about the words that we may stumble, where we exaggerate who we are. Maybe we try to seem a lot better than we are. But this is actually pointing at people. Maybe we stumble in our words with people with how insincere we are with our words. What about if it's like harsh criticism? What about the lies and the gossips? Or trying to get back at someone using your words? It seems like it's something that we've all experienced on being on one end or the other. And he brings this to mind because it's so important. And as I was reading through this, I was like, I've come up with a loophole. Let's not say anything at all. Let's just be silent, and then we should be good, right? Well, have you ever heard that saying, if you have nothing good to say, then don't say it at all? Like I've actually said it. You probably said a form of it, but it's not good enough. Being silent is not good enough. Not saying something is not good enough. God actually wants more for us. And when we're looking at stumbling here, the word is actually not this fatal fall. It's actually tripping someone up or causing someone to stumble in their spiritual progress. And none of us should want that. So what is James getting at? James is saying that words reveal, and that we are not able to control our tongues, yet it actually reveals something about you and I. And actually, whenever we have some kind of success, it's actually God's work within us, pointing to someone else. This teaching isn't about this sinless perfection. It's actually pointing at the imperfections and sin that might be in our hearts. Jesus actually taught that in Luke chapter 6, verse 45. He says this, "The good person out of the good treasure of his heart produces good, and the evil person out of his evil treasure produces evil. For out of the abundance of the heart, his mouth speaks." Jesus says that our tongues don't create what's actually in our hearts. It's our hearts that reveal, our mouth's actually what reveals what's in our hearts. Think about the last thing that you said outside of this setting that you're in right now. What did that reveal about you? What did it say about you? Every conversation actually can be an opportunity to see what is happening within each and every one of us. If maybe you're not convinced here, just think about the last time you were angry, frustrated, sad, or you're caught off guard. What did you say? Because maybe it reveals more about ourselves than the other person in the conversation. What if it's pointing to something and intentionally does so that we can begin to see that God has a work? It reveals something in our lives. And what happens here is that we see the tongue is so small, but it's massive. It's revealing what is happening in each and every one of us. And now James is taking us from the stable into ships. And my experience with ships is actually like rowboats. My wife was saying it was a canoe. I don't even know what it was, because I was a youth pastor and we were at a marsh and everyone was on these things that were on water. And there was one youth who did not want to go. And I went up to him and I said, "Hey, I would love to go with you. Like, let's do it. It's going to be a lot of fun." Yeah. Well, we got a really crash course of what to do, a little tutorial, and then they launched us off and we enjoyed the marsh and the beauty of it as we were just going and gliding on that water. No. Actually, he launched us off and we began to spin in circles. They gave us these little wooden things and we were literally spinning in circles. And that's what we spent most of our time doing until we crashed into something. And these 80-year-old men actually pushed us out. And if you're listening, thank you so much. But literally, it was just this experience. And it's amazing how our words actually direct so much. He uses these illustration of ships. They can weigh thousands of tons, be pushed through waves and water, yet a small rudder compared to the ship is actually directing this entire massive thing. And it's the same with you and I. Our tongue is small, yet it can direct so much. It can direct our lives. It also can direct the people that are in our lives. I want to spend this moment and actually think about the tongue that's in your mouth. I know that's weird to think about, but just humor me for a second. Your tongue is actually made up of 8 different muscles. It's actually unique to you, which is used kind of like a fingerprint. It's actually one of your body parts that can heal a lot faster than all the other. It actually can help you to breathe, it can help you to taste, it can help you to speak. That's amazing. How this small little thing can cause great direction, like encourage someone who's discouraged, like restore a relationship that was broken, like leading someone to Jesus, or maybe wounding someone. I love how God decides to create the universe through his speaking. He says, let it be. And we see it in Genesis, and he creates. It's so amazing. We may not have the power of God, but we have tremendous power in our words. And this is not about us lacking any influence. It's what direction is it taking us? Because it talks about these greater things. And I was actually thinking about my family. I was thinking about how they know the tones of my voice. They know when I'm serious. They know when I'm talking to them about something. And the direction that we actually pour into them is great things. Sometimes it comes in ways of correction. And sometimes it comes in such beautiful ways of just simply saying that I love them. I'm proud of them. You just see the weight and how it reveals and the direction and the beauty. Because we're going to continue to see the impact of things that are not good, but we need to know that God's intentions are for the greater things that he has for each and every one of us. Because he goes from ships to forests. Why? Because words burn. Just think about the forest fires that we just had recently. Devastating acres of land. It's destroyed homes. It's polluted the air. It's caused evacuations. It's done so much damage. So much frustration has come out of it, so much loss, so much inconvenience, even to people who are not even close to those fires. It still has caused so much damage. That's the same with careless words. It has caused so much damage. It can cause so much of that. If you just think about it a little bit, is that we've had thousands of conversations. We've had so many compliments, but the thing that seems to hold the most in our lives is the burns, the words that burn. Where all of a sudden you're reminded and it's like touching it and you're just like, that's still there. James, I love what he says in verse 6. He says, the tongue is set among our members, staining the whole body, setting on fire the entire course of life, and set on the fire by hell. We often don't take seriously our words. And that is because we don't always see the damage. Sometimes we'll say something and not know the damage until a while later, until it's the whole force is caught on fire. James uses this extremely strong language because careless words are not just small mistakes. They're not small mistakes. They actually point to the destructive power of sin at work within us that we may not think about, but it's stirring from other hurt, stirring from things that are happening, trying to defend ourselves or things like that. And it points to a need, and that need is found in Jesus. Yeah, I have many burns myself, and they're from shooting off fireworks or touching something over again when I was told not to. But there's also burns in my life that were verbally made. And it's just like, it's lasting, and you might feel that as well. It's those burns that are deep. So the question is, are our words burning and being destructive? Or are they beginning to calm down the fires and make a difference? Because it is one or another. Just think about how we can communicate now with text. You send one simple text and the fires of hell are unleashed. And he continues with this thought of poison, because our words, when they're unchecked, can cause these things that we've been talking about. James actually says that we can tame animals. And my brother actually rode on an elephant, by the way. I think that's pretty cool. But like, it's crazy how we can tame most animals, but he says we can't tame the tongue. He says no human actually has been able to. That's how serious our words are. Like, our words can accomplish what physical strength cannot. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. But that's how powerful our words are, and it should be checked. Because left unchecked, our words can destroy lives, or what it says there is poison. Like, if you ever had an argument and thought afterwards, man, I wish I didn't say that, where you're just like, I can't unsay this. As much as I'm apologizing, the damage is there, and James is warning us about this. That we've all discovered that I don't mean it doesn't undo the damage. It's this great impact, and James is not telling us to try better or to be better speakers. He's actually showing us that we have a need for our hearts to be transformed. Because the question simply isn't, am I saying the right words? It's what is being produced from my heart and the words that I say. It's this impact that he just continues to show because he actually brings us right into this conversation. He actually comes into the space that we are in right now. He talks about praising God. Sometimes walking into the space and raising our hands or crossing our arms, that's another different message. But like it's coming into the space and maybe you are exploring faith and you just didn't know like what it would be like, but you're here. But for some of us, we've come here praising God, yet we leave the room and we're cursing someone who's made in the likeness of God. That's what his word says in the Bible. Because if Jesus has changed our hearts, then it should be heard in our words. It should be changing our words. It should be changing the way that we think about what we say. And think about the people that are sitting around you right now. Or think about the people that pass by you, the serving team members, the children, the spouses, the people. You have an opportunity to say something to them. You have actually an opportunity to impact them, influence them. Even a simple hi can make a huge impact in someone's life, and we don't always see the impact of that. The way that we speak to others actually matters to God so much. That's why he's bringing it to our attention. That's why he's showing us the seriousness of all of this, because the people who know us best are probably the same people who have hurt us the most. It says here in Proverbs 10:19, when words are many, transgressions are not lacking, but whoever restrains his lips is prudent. He says, hey, if we're considering this and allowing God to speak into our lives and transform our hearts, wisdom is going to come out in the way that we speak. It's actually wiser. But if we continue to talk to try to justify ourselves, we continue to spiral and try to change things in the way that we say, it's just going to cause even more damage. So we're kind of at this place like, where do we go from here? Like, do I even have a chance? I was actually thinking about my daughter while I was preparing for all of this, and she's what we call pre-verbal. She doesn't say many words or none really at all. And don't let that fool you. She communicates in amazing ways. Like literally she'll grab my finger and show me an image that is like super tiny, and she's telling me what she wants. She communicates through her laughter, through her facial expressions, through signing, through her typing, through so many different ways. It's amazing how we can actually communicate when we listen to one another. But here's the thing. I've seen them devastating moments where she gets so frustrated because she can't get the words out. They devastate her. And being with her has taught me so much. She reminds me that words are so valuable. Like when we don't have them, we actually realize how much they matter. We should throw thousands of words out each and every day. A quick Google search, it says like 6,000 to 16,000. You know where you are, more or less. But there's so many words that come out of our mouths, from our tongues. It sure reminds me that we shouldn't take one for granted. There's great celebration when she says one single word, because we know that she's expressing what is happening. And James isn't asking us to stop talking, to be silent, not to say anything at all. That is not the point of all of this. It's actually every word has an opportunity. How he's actually calling us to listen and not assume. A lot of times we'll go into conversations and we'll just assume and begin to talk, and that causes damage. What about actually listening? And he's actually not calling us to be pushovers or not talking at all. He's actually calling us to be strong in what we say. He's actually calling us to be loving in what we say. He's actually calling us to be transformed from the inside out so that it is actually real, it's genuine. It's actually biblical what we say. Like he's actually calling us into this greater way of sharing and having conversations. But it seems not to be the case. As James 3:10 says this, brothers, it comes out of a place of love. These things ought not to be so. We need Jesus. We truly need, and that's what he's bringing us to, because Jesus is one who never messed up his words. He was strong and true and gracious in what he said. When it comes down to his commands and his correction, it was full of life and invitation into a direction that would transform lives, not just the person, but everyone around them. And that is an opportunity that you and I get. Not only does he give us this example, but he actually went to the cross. He actually paid for every ill will, cutting comment, every careless conversation that we've had, every lie, every thing that we've said to try to hurt somebody. He went and paid for that. And what he does is invites us into this transformation that he has for us. And I love that James brings us into these moments where we understand that it's that he begins to change in us. And that change changes the way that we say, because steadfast faith isn't just seen in what we believe. It's actually heard in what we say. Just think about our small towns. Let's just think about the neighborhoods that we're in. Word spreads fast, doesn't it? I remember walking into a small town and seeing the little whisperings happening as people are just walking by. Think about all the conversations that are happening within the man sheds and the moms groups and these little social circles on front porches. Think about those conversations. Would you say that they're more burning? What is happening in our towns and neighborhoods? Or are they bringing more healing? And should we think differently in what we say? Should we allow God to transform us, that it would bring healing and transformation to the people all around us? Because we don't want to cause others to stumble. And here we are today, and some of us may be thinking, man, I need forgiveness. And God does provide that. For some of us, we're like, we have been hurt by what people have said. Maybe even the church. And God does a healing. Maybe for some of us who are in this space, before we ask God to change our words, it's actually God change our hearts. Because Jesus actually offers something amazing. He offers grace. He offers life. He offers a new beginning as you call on his name. He actually begins to transform us from the inside out, which transforms our words. But may we go from this conversation and know that God cares deeply about you and I and what we say. He actually created us not to be silent, but to communicate what he has on his heart, to communicate ways that actually does such a greater things than we could ever imagine. But it takes being like, I can't do this on my own. I can't. But I can go to Jesus. And Jesus does that work in each and every one of us. So as you consider your words, may you consider God to do transformation within your heart.